Welcome to the Wife Stories YouTube channel. New video every day, and don't forget to subscribe. Here we go.
You're strong, right? That's the first thing I hear in my head as I stand outside in the warm evening air, fumbling with a cigarette I haven't touched in a decade. My fingers tremble. 10 years ago, I quit for my wife. She hated the smell, the taste, the idea of it. I promised her I'd stop. I did. But right now, every cell in my body screams for something to numb the panic. My nails scratch against the cheap lighter. There's a click, a spark. Then heat. I inhale. Hard. My throat burns as if scalded by acid, and I let out a ragged cough that tears at my chest. The smoke billows out, swirling into the night, an echo of the chaos inside me. She never liked the smell, but she's inside the house at this very moment, in our bathroom, with the shower running. Maybe she can't smell anything beyond the steam and her shampoo. Maybe she's not thinking about me at all. I'm supposed to be strong, right? A steady, dependable guy. I keep my hands from shaking by gripping the edge of the porch railing. There's no breeze. Everything's stifling, thick with the tension I can't speak out loud. But it's just beginning. The real blow hits 20 minutes later, when I'm standing in the kitchen, foam pressed against my ear. This morning, I was at work, wrapping up some supply management details. Routine. A dull day. Then I saw a text from her. Need to talk tonight. My heart skipped a beat, but I convinced myself it was nothing. Our marriage had been quiet lately, but not like this. I dialed home. Once. Twice. The third time, I heard it pick up. I waited for her voice. Instead, a man answered. She's in the shower. Hold on. My brain short-circuited. Then a click. Line dead. I stood there, phone to my ear, not even breathing, trying to process. The silence roared in my head, a monstrous hum that drowned out the usual office chatter. I still hear it. An avalanche of suspicion, rushing down, burying me alive. That was 5 hours ago. I drove home half insane, my mind cycling through every explanation. But deep down, I already knew. And then I stepped inside, saw her stepping out of the bathroom, hair damp, wearing a robe, her eyes wide as if cornered by guilt. I said nothing. She said nothing. Somewhere in my periphery, I caught a glimpse of movement, a shadow in the hallway. He was there, half-dressed, fumbling with his shoes. He tried to slip past me, and I only managed to see the side of his face, but I will never forget that expression. Not fear, not shame. More like annoyance at being interrupted. I stood perfectly still, the front door open, letting the warm air from outside spill in. She didn't call him by name in that moment. She just looked at me with parted lips, and I saw him glance over his shoulder toward her, like he was making sure she was okay. Then he left. That was the entire scene. Maybe 15 seconds, but it felt like an hour of suspended time where I couldn't even blink. It's not that I wasn't angry. I was. But there was also something else, a hollow, gnawing certainty. Like seeing a car crash in slow motion. You know it's real, you know it's horrific, but you just stand there, powerless. My wife, Sarah, wrapped that robe tighter around her, her hair still dripping. I remember each drop falling onto the tile, a tiny wet circle that soaked into the grout. She tried to speak. I walked away. Behind me, her voice cracked as she called my name. But it sounded distant, as though someone had turned the volume down. I made it to the driveway, sank into the driver's seat, turned the key. The engine rumbled, but I couldn't bring myself to pull out. Instead, I just stared at our front door, waiting for her to come after me, to say something. Anything. Minutes ticked by. She never came out. The sun dipped lower, painting the sky orange, then red, then purple. Still no sign of her. By the time darkness settled, I was still there, going mad in my silent car. And that was the first night. I didn't sleep much, if at all. Instead, I replayed that phone call, That shower, that man's voice. The images wouldn't stop. Her soft robe, clinging to her body. The water glistening on her bare legs. The way she clutched the fabric around her chest. My imagination twisted, showing me flashes of him touching her. The steam swirling around them. His hands gliding over her skin. My wife's quiet moans. The press of his body against hers. Every detail hammered itself into my mind with brutal clarity. At one point, I rested my forehead on the steering wheel, smothering a scream that threatened to break out. My phone buzzed with a message from my boss, something about schedules. I turned it off. Sometime before dawn, I guess I dozed off, because I woke to the sound of birds singing. My back ached, my neck felt like it had a knot the size of a fist. The house stood silent. Curtains drawn. For a flicker of a second, I wondered if I'd dreamed the whole thing. But the memory was too vivid. I forced myself to check the window. The curtains moved, just a slight shift, like someone peered out, then backed away. That was her. I exhaled, my breath shaky. Then day 2 rolled in, and I stayed in the car again. I should have gone to work, tried to pretend everything was normal. But normal was gone. I was stuck. The car felt safer, ironically. No smell of her perfume, no sounds of her footsteps. Just me and the engine. At noon, I left for 15 minutes to use a gas station restroom, get some water. Then I came back and parked in the same spot, closer to the house this time. If she needed groceries or errands, I didn't know. I didn't ask. I felt like I was rotting from the inside out, but I also felt compelled to remain. This was my home, my wife, my life. I was not going to slink away as if I'd done something wrong. If she wanted me gone, she'd have to come out and say it. I wanted to see if she would open that door and confess. She never did. The second night was worse. The images in my head were more vivid. I was haunted by the idea of him pressing his mouth against hers, her letting him do it, maybe craving it, the way she once craved me. I pictured them in bed, on my side of the mattress, the blanket twisted around their legs, the overhead light off, maybe a small lamp flickering. The rustle of sheets, her quiet whispers, his breathless laughter. The phone on the nightstand, buzzing with my missed calls. I saw it all. And I wondered, had this been going on for weeks? Months? Was that even the first time? Or was it just the first time I called at the wrong, or right, moment? Morning came again, and I was still there, body cramped, mind spinning. People talk about heartbreak as a metaphor, but I swear I could feel my heart physically tightening, like a muscle clenched in an endless spasm of agony. I coughed and realized my lungs were raw from chain-smoking cigarettes I'd hastily bought from a 24-hour store. 10 years undone in a single day. On the third day, I got a call. The test results I'd been dreading. We had 2 kids. The older one was definitely mine. The younger, not mine. The man on the phone, some lab technician, didn't even sound sorry. It was clinical. The probability of paternity is 0%. I ended the call, eyes on the front door. Everything froze. The car engine hummed, a low vibration beneath my seat, as though echoing my own trembling. Strangely, I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I just stared at the house. I remember my phone slipping out of my hand onto the passenger seat. The sound was small, but in that moment, it might as well have been thunder. That single piece of paper with its black and white data had just decimated any illusions I was stubborn enough to hold on to. So I inched the car forward, right up to the front steps. I wanted her to hear the motor. I needed her to know. I'm here, and I know. Eventually, the door swung open. She came outside in a long t-shirt and jeans, hair tied back in a messy knot. She looked thinner, or maybe just older. The moment she saw me, her eyes brimmed with tears. I watched her. I didn't speak. I pressed my lips into a grim line, almost a smile, but not quite. She opened her mouth, tried to say something. She stopped herself. It's not what. But no words came out that made sense. She seemed lost in shame or regret, or maybe just the shock of me being so close and still silent. The engine rumbled steadily, like a heartbeat. She took a step closer. I flicked away the half-burned cigarette, ignoring the taste of ash on my tongue. She whispered, "I'm sorry," but the phrase died on her lips because even she seemed to realize how empty it sounded. That's when I smiled for real. This terrifying, hollow grin. In that second, I saw something in her eyes collapse, like a building imploding. She covered her face, but I didn't move to comfort her. My palms stayed on the steering wheel. I felt calm. A dangerous calm that stirred somewhere deep in my gut. I drove off a few minutes later. Not far. Just enough to get some air. Enough to let her assume whatever she needed to about my next move. The truth was, I had no plan. I only knew I couldn't bear to be in that house. People ask me why I didn't confront the lover. What would that have changed? I envisioned bursting in, smashing furniture, grabbing him by the collar. But violence wouldn't stop the truth. The child I thought was mine wasn't. My wife had another man in our bed, or at least in our shower. That was reality. No fistfight would rewrite genetics or erase the images that haunted me. I started sleeping in a motel near the airport for a while. Couldn't handle the house, but also couldn't handle going to my parents' place in Texas. Too many questions, and I was too raw. I spent my nights in a cheap, musty room that smelled like stale cigarettes and old carpet cleaner. By day, I'd go to work, pretend everything was normal. My boss gave me weird looks, colleagues whispered. I did my tasks mechanically, turned in reports on time. Inside, I was roiling, but on the outside, I was professional. From time to time, I drove by the house, just to see if she was still there. Some nights, I saw a strange car in the driveway. My stomach knotted. I'd imagine him inside. Marcus, I found out his name was. A freelance marketing guy with a flashy smile, a cocky stance. He posted pictures of them on social media once, apparently, though I'd never had the stomach to look. My friends told me about it. "Dude, you gotta see this," they said. But I didn't. I'd already seen enough. More and more, I dreamed of disappearing, just leaving, heading anywhere the road could take me. Maybe Phoenix, maybe Vegas, maybe the ocean, with the roar of the waves drowning out my memories. A dark thought kept surfacing in my mind. What if I just ended it all? That's the raw truth. I flirted with that idea more than once, just being done. Because how do you rebuild after something like that? But a flicker of cold determination told me I didn't want to die. I wanted to see justice. More specifically, I wanted to be free. Not locked in that loop of heartbreak, bitterness, and confusion. I needed, a kind of revenge, but not some violent act that would land me in jail. No, I wanted a reclaiming of myself. I met with a lawyer. We talked about divorce, custody of my older child. The younger child was biologically not mine, so legally, there were complexities. I remember how surreal it felt, discussing the fine points of spousal support, visitation schedules. My rage flared again. She destroyed everything. But I kept my tone measured, my words precise. The lawyer was impressed by my composure. "How are you so calm?" he asked, genuinely puzzled. "Better to keep calm than break something," I said. Meanwhile, word got around. People from the neighborhood started texting me, half sympathetic, half hungry for gossip. "Hey, how are you holding up? I heard about Sarah." I gave them short answers. I found out through that small-town rumor mill that my wife was living with Marcus, or at least frequently staying over at his apartment in the city. Some said she'd moved out entirely. Others claimed she was going back and forth. I decided I didn't care. I had a job to do and a life to salvage. That was my focus. The day the official divorce papers were ready, I sat in my car outside the courthouse, staring at the documents. The words on the page blurred together. In them, I recognized the sum total of our love, our promises, Our entire shared existence, reduced to lines of legal text. Sarah's name, my name, the children's names, minus paternity disclaimers. My attorneys typed out arguments. So neat, so cold. I signed them with a hand that barely shook. In the following weeks, something inside me hardened into steel. I stopped letting myself drown in sorrow. Instead, I started going to the gym after work, just an hour on the treadmill or elliptical, enough to remind my body it was alive. I didn't talk to many people, but I occasionally vented to a friend from the old days. He told me the same thing I once heard in my own mind. You're strong, man. Hang in there. Then, a random Tuesday evening, I went to see the kids. I picked up my older son from after-school practice. We got burgers, and for a second, life felt almost normal. When we pulled into the driveway to drop him off, Sarah came out to greet him. She looked tired. Not a single trace of that glowing confidence she once carried. I didn't roll down the window. She tried to get my attention, but I just gave my son a hug. She stood there, arms crossed, eyes darting. I knew she wanted to talk. Probably about finances, or about how complicated everything had become. But I wasn't in the mood for confessions or pleas. I pulled out of the driveway without a word. Some nights later, I ended up at a bar near my motel. I was feeling dangerously numb, sitting alone in a corner booth, ignoring a basketball game on the TV overhead. The place smelled like fried onions and spilled beer. A group of men were huddled by the bar, discussing the usual trivialities: sports, women, politics. I halfway listened, both resenting and craving that kind of normal conversation. My phone buzzed. Sarah's number. I pressed ignore. A text came. Please, I need to see you. I stared at it for a long while, finished my drink, then walked out into the parking lot. Under the harsh fluorescent lights, I found myself lighting another cigarette. That old burn in the chest, that swirl of smoke in the lungs. It calmed me. Maybe also killed me a little. But at that moment, it felt like the only friend I had. I never replied to her text. Days rolled into weeks. The divorce was moving forward. The tension was still there, but it started to transform. It was less about heartbreak, more about letting go. I guess that was my revenge. Refusing to let the betrayal define me anymore. Instead of confronting them physically, I went quiet, ghost-like, as if I'd stepped out of the old life and was forging a new one. Sarah must have sensed it. The next time we met, at the lawyer's office, she couldn't meet my eyes. Her hair was pulled back neatly, but her hand shook slightly when she signed her parts of the paperwork. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But the memories of her in that shower, the child that wasn't mine, those images flared up inside, and any pity dissolved. One morning, about a month later, I sat alone in that motel room with final confirmation that everything was done. We'd agreed on custody of my older son. The younger boy was legally recognized as someone else's responsibility now, though I still wrestled with the moral complexity of it. The heartbreak. The fatherly instincts that told me I should be there for him too. Then again, how do you father a child who has been used as a lie to keep you tethered? I wanted to move out of state, but the sensible part of me decided to stay close, keep my job, be near my son. Still, I needed a change. I found a small apartment near my workplace. Signed a lease. No fancy yard, no quiet suburban street, but it was mine. 4 walls that had never belonged to her. The night I moved in, I sat on the bare floor, leaning against boxes. Everything smelled of fresh paint and cardboard. I closed my eyes and felt an odd peace stirring at the edges of my exhaustion. For the first time in weeks, I slept without nightmares. I started therapy. Just a few sessions. The counselor was calm, methodical, a middle-aged woman who'd heard it all before. I guess I needed to say the words out loud. She cheated. The younger child isn't mine. I don't know how to process that. She nodded, asked about my coping strategies, my panic, my anger. We worked through some breathing exercises. Ironically, the same type I'd once mocked. But it helped. Each time I left her office, I felt a fraction lighter. And with that slow process, I found a new vantage point. I realized I was reclaiming parts of myself that had been buried in that suburban life. My old passions, my sense of independence. It was a quiet kind of vengeance, but it felt real. She'd expected me to break down, to chase after her, to fight the lover, to beg, to cry. Instead, I was letting her go. I heard rumors that her relationship with Marcus was already hitting the rocks. Maybe she thought he'd be a thrilling escape from our boring stability. Or maybe she just needed someone who looked at her with fresh eyes. The rumor was that Marcus had a wandering eye, that he was never around on weekends, that his finances weren't as stable as she believed. A few times, friends told me she was trying to contact me, to explain or talk it out, but I kept my distance. Eventually, I moved forward with the final steps of the divorce. My older child would stay with her on specific nights, with me on others, a standard arrangement. I remained polite, if distant. When she dropped him off at my new apartment for the first time, I saw the flicker of envy in her eyes. The small, modest place had a calm vibe, a new start. She lingered by the door, biting her lip. I looked at her. She opened her mouth. "How are you?" she whispered. "Fine," I said flatly. A pause. She brushed a strand of hair off her face. "Thank you for bringing him," I interrupted, quietly. She nodded, then left. That was the last time we exchanged more than a few words in person. Everything else was done through lawyers or brief texts about scheduling. The man I once laughed with and confided in, my younger self who believed in love and trust, felt like a stranger now. In the middle of all that, I remember the day the official decree arrived in the mail, the final stamp of dissolution. I sat at my kitchen table, reading it over. Legally unattached. Freed. No more illusions. My wedding ring was in a drawer somewhere, a useless band of metal. I tried to cry but felt only emptiness. Then a surge of something else. Power. Freedom might be a lonely road, but it was still a road out of hell. Weeks turned into months. I found a routine. Work, gym, fatherhood on my designated days, and solitude. I didn't date. I wasn't ready. But I caught glimpses of myself in the bathroom mirror in my new place. Eyes a little harder, lines on my face a little deeper, hair still dark, but with a bit of silver creeping in at the temples. I looked older than my 38 years, but there was a strange acceptance in that reflection. Once, I heard from a mutual acquaintance that Sarah had ended things with Marcus, that she was seeing someone else who resembled me physically, maybe the same height or haircut. I wondered if that was true or just rumor. But the idea struck me as both pathetic and telling. She was chasing an echo of what we had, or maybe trying to punish herself in some twisted way by picking men who reminded her of me. Who knows? I never tried to verify it. I'd severed myself from her world. That was the best gift I could give myself. Some folks call it bitterness or stubborn pride. I call it survival. My old house eventually sold. I managed to get a decent settlement, and that helped pay off joint debts we had. The rest I used to plan for the future. It wasn't lavish, but it was enough to imagine a different life. I remember the day I drove by that empty house for the last time. A sold sign stood on the lawn. The windows were bare. The new owners would repaint, redecorate, turn it into something fresh. Good for them. I killed the engine, sat there. For a moment, I recalled the day we first moved in, full of hope. Sarah's laughter echoing off the empty walls. My arms around her waist, spinning her in the living room. All gone. I stepped out, walked up to the porch, placed my hand on the door that no longer belonged to me. Just for a second, I let the memories swirl. Her perfume, her voice, the kids running around, the faint scent of coffee in the mornings. Then I walked away, leaving those ghosts behind. Now, I can't say the pain vanished entirely. It's still there, an ache that flares up whenever I think about how quickly love can turn to betrayal. But it doesn't consume me anymore. My revenge, if you can call it that, was refusing to let her see me destroyed, refusing to degrade myself with anger or violence. The night I discovered her infidelity, I fantasized about dragging that man out and smashing my fist into his smug face. But that would have chained me to their drama forever. Instead, I took all that rage and channeled it into building a new life, one where she and her lover had no power over me. It's been almost a year since I last spoke to her in person. I stand here in my small apartment now, glancing at the mirror. My reflection looks tired, yes, but also steady. I straighten my shoulders. A single lamp casts a warm glow on the walls. I still wrestle with regrets. I regret not seeing the signs sooner, regret the damage done to my kids, regret the nights I nearly gave in to despair. But as I look into my own eyes, I feel something close to peace. I used to wait by the threshold, waiting for her to come out, waiting to hear an apology, waiting for life to rewind itself. That's gone now. I've become someone else, someone who learned, painfully, that sometimes the only real victory is to walk away, your head unbowed. So yes, people say she tries to find me in other men, a hollow attempt to recapture what she lost. I don't track her. I don't ask. But I hear the whispers. It doesn't matter. That door is closed. I let the final wave of reflection pass, then exhale slowly. The overhead fan hums. I flick the cigarette in my hand, noticing how I've held on to these things, my old vice. But I'm no longer chain-smoking them every moment. I guess it's a process, cutting ties with my illusions, one step at a time. In the mirror, I see a faint smirk on my face. Maybe it's acceptance. Maybe it's a promise to myself that I won't be that docile, naive man again. The line between revenge and release has blurred, and I'm okay with that, because I'm not at her doorstep anymore, not waiting in the car for nights on end. I don't need an audience. I'm here, in my own space, in my own mirror. And I'm okay with who I see staring back. That's enough for me.